This is a big one. If you're familiar with the channel, you know I've done videos on sailing with the alpha and the beta, but we just got a blog that shows us how sailing is going to integrate with over 12 different skills in old school RuneScape, which is so many, and it doesn't even include Slayer, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. We're going to break down exactly what's being introduced in the game, from new methods to resources, and talk about what you might need to prepare ahead of the release of sailing. Let's start off with woodcutting. With the release of sailing, we're going to get the introduction of 4 new types of logs. The first one isn't going to be super relevant. You might use it for fire making, but it's mostly for quests. The next 3 though are hardwood logs, and they're going to be super important for multiple skills, mainly related to construction and your boat, but there is some other uses regarding fletching and potentially farming in some ways, at least for XP. Now, if you want to be prepared ahead of sailing's release, you want to shoot for 92 woodcutting to get access to rosewood, which is the highest tier log. If you can't quite reach that in time, definitely try to at least aim for 80 to get ironwood logs. Let's talk about exactly how you're going to utilize these new logs, and the first way, as mentioned, is through construction. What you're going to do is turn these logs into planks. You can then use the planks to upgrade your ship, add new facilities, upgrade facilities, etc. In addition, you can combine 5 planks together to make a hull part, and combine 5 of those together to make a large one. This means that you're using 25 planks to make one large hull part. This is probably going to be used, obviously, to do your larger upgrades, and I suspect there's going to be a decent amount of planks used as a result. There's also a chance these planks get used as like boat food in some ways, as we saw in the beta. We're not going to use food to heal our ship, we're going to use like wood. So there might be a constant economy with these planks and these logs, which is very nice. If you want to be ready ahead of sailing's release for like the max possible upgrades, you're going to want 84 construction to make the best planks and hull parts. This is actually pretty good and pretty convenient for a lot of people who stop at, 82, 83 construction for max POH anyways. So yeah, just push for those extra few levels, or maybe just boost for them. Other than that, you can maybe shoot for 77 or 53 to get you sort of ready in the mid game for sailing. Another way you're going to utilize these logs is through fletching, and I don't think this is going to be a training method. We'll have to see what the XP is, but primarily you just need a couple logs along with a squid beak, which we'll talk about later, to make a blowpipe. There are 3 new blowpipes coming in. They are all much weaker than the toxic blowpipe, but it fills the same sort of thing. You got a 2-tick weapon with a 5-tile range that fires darts, which is awesome to see. I expected eventually the blowpipe to come in. I think, in fact, when I was doing the beta, I made a blowpipe, like a placeholder blowpipe, while I was there. Now, this is going to be a good option for early mid-game Ironman, definitely, but I don't expect them to go for the rosewood one because the requirements are rather high. 65 range, not bad at all. 84 fletching is a little bit steep, but definitely more obtainable with the new fletching minigame. This real stopgap here might actually be the woodcutting level. It's 92 woodcutting to get rosewood logs. If that's the only way to get the logs, similar to redwoods, you're not going to get that for a while. So I expect instead to go for one of the other blowpipes, which are still pretty respectable and fill the same niche. That's going to be the most popular option by far. If we're trying to compare this to what currently exists, there really isn't much when it comes to like 2-tick weapons. It would be throwing darts with an offhand like an antler guard, which provides similar stats overall, maybe a little bit weaker, but you're also getting negative defense bonuses and you're getting a reduced tile range as well. However, the antler guard does provide prayer bonus and melee stats, so maybe there's a case of using that in some ways, but I do think the blowpipes are going to be a very popular option in the mid game. I also do think they have a little bit of an option in the late game as well. Primarily when you have to just tag a monster or hit a monster once and the damage doesn't really matter. So this is stuff like Slayer tasks, or Fasani's Nightmare Sleepwalkers, or TOA when you're dealing with the little medic spawns. This is a way where you can tag them very easily without having to use your actual blowpipe. When I use my actual blowpipe, I'm using my best darts, right? So I'm wasting those darts. Or I have to unload my blowpipe every single time and load it up with bad darts, and then remember to put my good darts back inside. Instead, I can just have one of these blowpipes, and that could be my, tag monster blowpipe, and then just have my toxic blowpipe have my dragon darts. So I'm very excited for that. Even as an account that's max combats, I'm still going to find a use for this blowpipe. Moving on to the next gathering skill, mining. Mining is introducing 3 new resources, and these are going to be used for smithing and upgrading your ship and creating cannonballs we'll get into, but let's talk about the new resources. Lead is the first one, and this is a really low level resource at 25 mining. This is just like a regular mining rock. It's going to be very similar to iron. In fact, this might be an alternative to iron rocks. It's going to be similar-ish XP, but you're also going to be getting a resource you might need in sailing later. So this is going to be very popular for low level accounts for training mining. Then we have the rubium. Rubium is going to be kind of like Infernal Shale, where you're going to have 2 options. You're going to have a more active option versus a more AFK option, but in the end, you're getting the same thing, which is a stackable splinter, and then you're going to use these splinters with cannonballs later that we'll talk about. And then lastly is nickel. This is going to be kind of like pay dirt in Motherlode Mine. It's going to be fairly AFK. Naturally, in mining, you're going to use all these resources with the smithing skill entirely through smithing. The lead can be turned into lead bars, which is a low-level upgrade for your ship, facilities, etc. The higher level bar that you're creating is cupronickel, which is using the nickel and 2 copper to create that bar. Interesting here, you're using copper. That's a very low-level ore that I have not had in my bank for a very long time, so I'll definitely need to stock up on that ahead of the release of sailing. In addition, you are using existing bars, bronze through rune, to craft a couple of different things. First thing you're going to do is make keel parts. So 5 bars will make 1 keel part. And again, 5 keel parts make 1 large keel part. So this is going to be a case where I recommend definitely stocking up on your bars ahead of release. 25 bars is going to make 1 large keel part. And again, we don't know if this is going to be an ingredient in making boat food, similar to the hull discussion earlier. So it's going to be nice to have all these, and it's going to probably be a good economy early on. There is also dragon. You can make dragon keel parts, and there's dragon sheets, but we don't know how we're getting those yet. So we'll have to see where that comes from. The other way to use your existing bars is through cannonballs. You got bronze through rune cannonballs, and of course there's dragon, but again, we don't know exactly how we're going to keep those going. You could also modify these cannonballs in a couple of unique ways. You can make a chain shot by combining 2 balls in a chain. That'll bind an NPC, or you can do incendiary cannonballs, which you combine the new rubium splinters to make them have a burn effect. So that's that last ore getting used in this skill, and I suspect this to be definitely worth a little bit of money, because who doesn't want the burn effect for extra DPS, especially early. The other thing here is they're adding a new furnace that will double the speed of crafting cannonballs. So that's going to be such a good milestone to go for. I believe it's 81 sailing to go for. I'm going to try to get that as quickly as possible. I also recommend that you head to Giant's Foundry at some point and get your double ammo mold ahead of the release, because that's going to get a lot more use with this update. Now, if you want to be absolutely fully ready ahead of sailing with all the unlocks here, you're going to need 94 smithing, but that's for the dragon tier, and we don't really understand that just yet. So even shooting for like 86 will be nice, or 90 to make the cannonballs. The next skill has massive impacts on the game, not just sailing. Definitely PVM as a whole is going to be changed because of this, and that's fishing. Fishing has 2 new activities and a bunch of new fish that of course impact cooking and herblore. I will talk about cooking in combination with fishing here because it makes sense to know what they do, but we'll talk about herblore a little bit later. The first type of activity you have is harpoon and lantern fishing, which allows you to catch 2 types of squid. You can use these as a food source. It's like a low-level healing food, or you can use a knife on them to get squid paste, which makes a certain potion we'll talk about later. Or in addition to that, you can try to get a squid beak from them when you're cutting them with a knife. If you remember earlier, squid beak is a recipe needed to make the new blowpipes. So that's going to be important for people to try to get. Luckily, the requirement to start doing this is level 52 fishing, 69 for the better ones, but at least you could get a chance at the beak at a fairly low fishing level. The next activity we have is, of course, deep sea trawling, and this is where the bulk of the new fish are coming in. And let's talk about some of the interesting fish when it comes to what they can do for healing when you're cooking them. Haddock is the first interesting one you can do at level 73 fishing and cooking, and this can overheal you up to 10 hit points, which is honestly very nice because it's something you can do more of the early mid game when you don't have access to anglers quite yet. Even if you had anglers in like the GE, Anglers when you're having like 50 hit points only overheal you like 10 or 11 anyways, so this would be equal to that. But generally speaking, this is going to be your mid-game overhealing food until you have access to Anglers full turn. Yellowfin tuna, that's a sort of interesting one, nothing too strong, but it gives you 20% run energy back in addition to healing you by 19, so similar to dashing kebets, which I think heal you a little bit more. So this can be a good option when you just need a little bit of run energy here and there. I had a couple of layouts that had these inside, I think like maybe Whisper or something like that. Next interesting one, this one's massive, is halibut. Halibut can be used as a combo food, which means you can use it with like anything, and then this, which is similar to what you use like shark karamwan. So it's like a karamwan, but it heals for 20 instead of 18. So we're boosting our healing capacity by 2 here. So that's going to be taking over a lot of the metas for combo eating. However, karamwans, you know, they're very, very quick to get. Who knows how quick halibut are to get, so you might have to pick and choose when to use karamwans versus halibut. Bluefin tuna is arguably going to be like the second best, maybe third best food in the game. It heals for 22, which is the same as anglers and mantas, which is the current best in like a single tick. You have moonlight antelope meat, which heals you for 26, but it takes time to get the second effect, like 4 seconds, and you can overeat too many of them and stuff like that. So this here is going to be equal to manta and anglers, but it's also going to restore you 5 prayer points, which is a nice little bonus. It's not a tremendous amount of prayer points if you think about having like an inventory of them. Like if you had 10 of them, that's 50 prayer points, but hey, that's not bad. And if you combine this with redemption, there could be some interesting tech here, because you can lower yourself to redemption range, you know, heal from redemption, heal from the fish, get back to like 50 HP instantly, and then work your way back down with those 5 prayer points and proc redemption again, like something in Theiving, and maybe some interesting PVM uses, maybe like Vespula. This could be an option to just bring like one of these, but I don't know, we'll have to see. And then the best food coming into the game is gonna be marlin. This is just the straight best food because it heals 24. That is the single best single bite you can get in the game. So that's going to be a fish that people are going to go for. So if you want to be ready ahead of sailing, you need 91 fishing to be able to get yourself some marlin. Hunter is also introducing a new method, the crab expeditions, which I really hope is like an expedition. Like you go out there and you catch hundreds of crabs, deadliest catch style. But this is going to be mostly sort of as an early game hunter training experience. Now, obviously we have hunter rumors now, which are really good, but this could be something you can do out at sea. The crabs are obviously used in cooking and herblore. When it comes to cooking, none of these provide any unique effects or crazy healing. I think the best one heals for about 19. But if your fishing levels are lagging behind, maybe you did some early hunter rumors on your account and your hunter's really high, this could be a solid food option for you. Of course, you can also break them down and get paste from them to make a couple of herblore potions. And, you know, for the most part, they're kind of niche, but there is one that's pretty good. Farming is also heavily impacted by sailing's release in 3 different ways. The first one, we've already talked about quite a bit. Hardwood tree patches are obviously going to enable you to put these hardwood trees in, these new ones, rosewood, ironwood, and camphor. I suspect you'll be able to chop these out in nature, but this is just a way for you to plant them, get a bunch of XP because they take so long. Probably a decent pet chance as well, and maybe some tick manipulation involved as well. But it will require 92 farming to be able to leverage that completely. We're going to talk about the new type of patch because I really want to get into herblore, and that is your coral nursery. You're going to be able to plant these frags, which are essentially seeds, right? They're just the ecologically accurate way of describing them, to grow mature coral. Now these coral and the coral patches are actually kind of similar to herb patches in a couple of ways. Timing wise, they're sort of similar, but they take a little bit longer, like an extra hour. And in terms of the way you use them, they are going to be your new primary ingredient for all the new potions in herblore. Before we talk about the rest of farming, I want to jump over to herblore now, because we just talked about the coral nursery, which is like the new herb. We just talked about hunter and fishing as well. And all 3 of those combine into the new herblore changes. And this one is absolutely massive. Anti-odor salt. So this is a stackable salt that's automatically consumed to smoke a hunter trap. You can currently smoke a hunter trap in game. You can currently bait a hunter trap in game. Both of those increase your catch rate. No one does them. However, since this is a stackable resource that happens automatically, makes sense. Why not just carry a stack of these around, right? Increase your catch rate. In addition, they're using a primary and second ingredient that you'll see isn't going to be used in abundance. So it makes sense to make a bunch of salt on the side. So moving on to the potions. Anti-bleed tonic is the first one you can make at 56 Herblore. It cures bleeding and heals for 5 hit points. So in terms of curing bleeding, this is mainly used at Bar Dorvis. It's very nice when you get hit by an axe. You're basically preventing yourself from taking 15 to 20 damage from that bleed. You can also use it at Custodian Stalkers, which also have a bleed effect if you fail to protect magic against them at the right time, which is kind of annoying to do when you're trying to AFK them anyways. So this could be an option to bring there as well. Zabak also does a bleed, but I don't think it counts as the same bleed, and I also don't think it's worth bringing into TOA for one mechanic you're probably not going to interact with. Other than that, though, we also have the effect of healing you by 5 hit points. So this potion can heal you total 20 hit points, which is actually not bad. And I suspect it won't cause an attack delay. So it's kind of like a Guthix Rest, which I'm actually a huge fan of because there's been times where I want to do speedrun tasks and I'm an Iron Man that's too lazy to make Guthix Rests, right? So I just take Karam Wands because their delay is what, like 2 ticks? This will have no delay, so I'll probably bring this instead. So I'll probably make a stack of these primarily for that use case. And I suspect more bleed to come in the future as well. The next couple potions I want to talk about are boost potions. There's one that is going to boost your fishing by 6, and the other one is going to boost your hunter by 6. Both of these are using the new mid-tier coral. I don't suspect you'll need a ton of these potions long term, but they can be very helpful when you're trying to reach certain achievement diaries, like the 96 fishing one that you need for Mauritania elites. I mean, doing it from 90 guaranteed, no stew boost, is incredible compared to our current options. Hunter, less so when it comes to boosting. Like the highest requirement I think that you can boost for is like 69, but still, there's going to be cases where you can boost. And there might even be cases where you can move to a new activity earlier than you think, because you can just bring a couple of these potions until you get the major level up, the actual level up, to be able to farm those naturally. Okay, so we also have an extreme energy potion. This can restore 40% run energy. Now, I don't think this is going to be used too much. Honestly, it makes sense to use a stamina instead. The other reason is it uses the umbral coral, which is like the high tier coral that you're going to use in another potion. So I really wouldn't bother making too many of these, if I'm being honest. Maybe if you didn't have access to staminas, it's a decent alternative. And speaking of staminas, we have the extended stamina potion coming. This is like a regular stamina potion, but it's 4 minutes instead of 2. And this doesn't use a coral as a primary ingredient. It uses an existing stamina potion, which means, use your existing stack, and those stamina potions are going to go further than they would before, which is very nice on Iron Man. One thing here, though, they do use marlin scales, right? Which is, the marlin is the new best fish, right? So you are trading off the ability to heal 24 in order to make better stamina pots. So these marlin, man, they're going to be probably good money makers because they're the best food and they're used to make extended stamina potions. In terms of using these potions, I mean, anywhere you bring a stamina, you can effectively bring like less now. So it's going to be incredible for some content. I think Chambers of Zarek is the one that really sticks out for me. I bring 2 staminas into Chambers and 1 for Olm. This will make it so that when I'm doing solos, I really just need the 1 stamina for the entire raid, including Olm. You can go into Olm with 1 stamina and come out with probably 2 doses. So this means you could probably do scales and bring in just 1 stamina to Olm, which is super, super nice. There's other activities, I'm sure, too, God Wars Dungeon, stuff like that, where you might only have to bring like 1 of these and the rest of your inventory can be whatever you need. The last potion we have here is the Arma Brew, and this is one I've been thinking about quite a bit. So it uses the umbral coral, which is the best coral, so you're going to definitely use this to make that probably really good XP at 89 Herblore especially. And it uses the rainbow crab, which is the highest level hunter crab you can do at level 77. And this potion is essentially, it's a Cerebrew, but it's different in a couple different ways. Instead of raising your defense and lowering the rest of your combats, this raises your range and lowers the rest of your combats, including defense. It also doesn't heal as effectively as a Cerebrew. Cerebrew can heal for 16 per dose, and this heals for 11 per dose. So that ends up being a total of 64 healing for 1 Cerebrew versus 44 for this. So if you're thinking healing per inventory slot, this is not going to be as strong. So if you're doing something like even the new Doom boss where, having your range level at 112 all the time is very nice, this is still less healing. So if you're diving like super, super deep, you probably want brews instead. If you're doing something like Nex, right? In some ways I could see this being useful because you keep your range up. So to get your combats back to full, it's one less sip because you're doing Arma Brew, Restore, Super Combat, and you're good, versus Sarah Brew, Restore, Super Combat, Range Pot, and you're good. So there's some credence there, but the fact that it doesn't heal as good and it also lowers your defense makes me feel like it won't be as good as Sarah Brews in a lot of ways. Lowering your defense while you're trying to heal, you're lowering your magic and your defense. Imagine being at next using these brews and only healing 11 for starters, while lowering your magic and defense. You're gonna get chunked by next. You're gonna take you're not gonna be able to tank anything. and I just don't think it's gonna get used. So I would love to hear your opinions on this brew. I think it maybe has some light use cases, but I just can't see it being nearly as impactful as Sarah Brews. But overall, Herblore, honestly, these are some awesome changes, and I'm very excited for the way they integrate with the other skills as well. Going back to farming, there are new seeds you can plant in hot patches as well. You can do flax seeds, hemp seeds, and cotton seeds for flax, hemp, and cotton. Now, I don't expect any of us to do flax seeds because, I mean, we probably have a ton of flax already. Unless you're super early game, you won't really do this. But definitely going to need to do cotton and hemp because these are going to be used in crafting. Once you've harvested these items from your hot patches, you're going to take them over to a spinning wheel or a loom. This will allow you to make either yarn or bolts of fabric. These are going to be used in two different ways. One of them is for upgrading your ship's sails, so that's going to be good for getting the best ship. And second is going to be for making fishing nets for deep sea trawling. Now, if you want to be ready ahead of sailing to be able to make the best sails and the best nets, all you need is 73 crafting. And I think most people are going to have that before sailing comes out. Thieving is the last skill I want to talk about today, at least, that's being impacted by the release of sailing. We're going to have a new NPC to pickpocket, chests to plunder, and stalls to steal from. But there's some interesting mechanics and items to keep an eye on here. First thing that's very important, when you're stealing from the chests or the NPC, you're going to be able to get coral frags, which of course are your new seeds to plant in your coral nursery. So that's going to be a really good source for them. Keep in mind, this is the frags, not the mature product. So we don't have a source for the mature product that we're aware of at this point, but this is also just one source. We don't know, maybe NPCs or monsters that you kill or bosses, those are likely going to drop coral frags and mature coral as well. But this is going to be a good source, I'm sure, especially early. There's also going to be the ability to steal some cannonballs here. The cannonballs overall though, like the highest you can get at 76 thieving is adamant cannonballs. So this might not end up being a super viable option for most accounts. It might just be better to make your own, but perhaps there's some decent money to be made here. And then these also give you the option to get a good amount of clues as well, which thieving for clues I think is always a pretty good idea. Now the stalls, that's going to be an interesting one because they're not like your traditional stalls. Instead of depleting as soon as you take from them, they're actually going to stay up. You just have to watch out for the guards patrolling the area or the guards around you. So this can be probably a somewhat AFK option for thieving. For interesting items you're getting here, really the fish stall does have the ability to thieve some of the new fish. None of the fish are too important here, but you can get the squid here. So I guess this is an alternative way of getting a squid beak without getting 52 fishy. You could instead get 42 thieving and get a squid beak, luckily through thieving, but apparently it's fairly rare to actually get the new fish from these stalls. And then the other interesting one is the cannonball stall. So this will allow you to actually get rune cannonballs. So hopefully it can be an okay source of rune cannonballs, but it does require 87 thieving. So if you want to be ready ahead of sailing to have the max abilities for thieving, that's what you're going to need, 87. I'm going to take a minute here now. I did not expect this many skills to be integrated into sailing on the day of release. Like maybe like a year or two from now, but not when the skill comes out. And I'm actually really looking forward to this integration because it's starting to make the skill feel very alive, feel like part of the game when it touches so many different parts. And it's clear that these systems work so well together already, so I'm sure it wasn't even as difficult as it would seem on paper because of the way old school is structured. And it doesn't just affect skilling either, like it's clearly going to affect PVM as well with some of these new potions and foods. And it's not the end of what we're seeing pre-release. They're going to release more information on how this is going to impact Slayer. by having new Slayer mobs and creatures. They're also going to show us new bosses that are coming out with unique drops as well. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you stuck around for this long, I really appreciate it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts below.